Hi guys, and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. We help Muslims and non-Muslims alike to understand and handle Islam in the 21st century. We consider ourselves to be decent human beings, so we condemn categorically any abuse, oppression, misogyny, slavery, violence, anything like that. We do embrace, however, free speech and also criticism, even if it is directed at us, if it is factual and constructive criticism. We focus on Islam exclusively. So if you're curious about anything Islam, you've come to the right place. Now, we don't attack, which is aggressive, destructive, and antagonistic, neither Islam nor Muslims. We ask questions and show facts. We refute false claims and present the reality of Islam, which is political Islam. We inspect, investigate, research, analyze, and then report and critique on Islam, the ideology, not the people. Now, the live stream goes to YouTube and Facebook, and there are three ways that you can participate in this. Either you join us in the live written chat, you can join the panel during the live show, or later on watch and comment the archive. And anyone can join to comment, critique, contribute, or question. This is not a Dawa channel with censorship. Don't go to Patreon, don't go to PayPal. Everything here is free. The way we work is usually we have some news, some Krazy Komments, a segment where we go and read the Quran, and then a discussion on the theme of the month, followed by integrating the live chat, ending with a Hadith of the week. If this is not enough Islam for you, there's still the Discord channel where you can discuss with us without anything being recorded. See you later and enjoy the Gin and Tonic Show. Hello. Welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show on this 5th day of March. We have a wonderfully full panel today. Good evening, gents. Just say hi to everybody. Okay,
good evening, everybody. Welcome to our guests. Good evening if you're watching us, and let's have an interesting evening.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, guys. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Oh,
Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
Mustafa
Yes,
first.
Okay.
I need to regulate this, yeah.
Okay, yes, okay. Hello, everyone. My name's Mustafa, and I'm an Ashia ex-Muslim. And I'm going to be hello everybody in the panel. Let's have a great discussion today.
Yeah. I'll go. Hey, guys. My name is Nick from the In the Nick of Time podcast. I'm grateful to be on here as a panelist, and hopefully we can spark a discussion that really helps.
Yes, this is what we're doing. Thunderous, the one with the thunder pants, the thunderwear. How are you doing tonight?
Hi, everybody. I'm glad to be on the show this evening, and welcome to the panelists. And good to see Mustafa and Nick on the show again, and maybe Smart Caps a little bit later on. So, everybody, enjoy the show.
I have invited him and sent him the link, so there is nothing stopping him, except if he's got prior commitments or something. Okay, as always, statement, news, Krazy Komments. The inspiration of the week is something that I'm going to start off with today, because I found this quite telling. If you look at this, let me just switch off the the welcome banner. We all know this, that we are welcoming you. And I pushed the one. Congratulations. So, Allah, place light in my heart. What is that supposed to do? This is supposed to be inspirational. This is supposed to be uplifting, giving confirmation and guidance to the Muslims who are craving any kind of confirmation. Place light in my heart. So if you have a light in your heart, how's that going to help you? I think this is, like so many things in Islam, metaphorical, where you don't really know what the hell is this, what this is supposed to mean until you start interpreting it, and then it means that it's supposed to be, do something nice for me, and that I will go and be able to worship you, and that's it. But in itself, it doesn't, it's meaningless.
And it mentions nur, like the Arabic word nuran, and basically nur is supposed to be the holy light, specifically. So it's asking to like place the God's holy light into my heart. And this is actually a fairly common prayer to Allahumma ij'al fi qulubin nuran. So this is a very, very common phrase, I think, usually before you start praying, before you start reading the Quran, before you start doing anything usually. But it's fairly common in Muslim community.
Ah, thank you. See, these are things I didn't know. So wonderful, but it still doesn't make any more sense because you don't put a light in your heart if you actually come to think of it. So there you go. Now, the other thing, what I found is there's only one piece of news for today, and this is quite weird, and this is important, I think, for us, because humanists, and this is a group, Humanist UK, and Humanist UK calls for action at the United Nations level to tackle anti-Muslim hatred. Now, I think this is incredibly important that we differentiate, and we point this out again. There's a lot of people who don't know how to differentiate between the ideology, which is Islam, and the people, which is the Muslim. And therefore, a lot of people project the feeling of discomfort with Islam onto Muslims. And then they go and they think, well, if I punish the Muslims, or if I somehow confront them, or if I do whatever, this is going to change Islam. Well, you can't do it like that. Well, at least in my opinion. My opinion is that you need to come with really clear arguments why it is that Islam is dangerous, why it is that Islam makes you uncomfortable, why it is that you are afraid even of Islam, without in any way attacking or in any way being violent towards the people, towards the Muslims. Because we have to understand that in most of the time, these people are brainwashed. If you ask Thunder, if you ask Mustafa, if you ask people ex-Muslims, they will confirm, and it's 100% of the time, that they were not aware that there was something wrong there. And a lot of people are so entrenched and so brainwashed that they will never get out of it by themselves. So by questioning this, by saying, okay, listen, there's something wrong here, this is what we are doing, then people start realizing, whoa, there's something wrong here. Is this really what I can go along with? And this, I think, is the only way that we're going to make any kind of inroads. And this is why this is, for me, very important, this headline, because it says, in its latest intervention at the United Nations Human Rights Council, Humanist UK has called for more action to be taken to address the worrying global rise of the persecution of Muslims, and for more research to be done into the links between the laws prohibiting blasphemy and anti-Muslim hatred. So there's a lot of, political backwash in here. So this whole thing, what is prohibiting blasphemy? I don't know what prohibiting blasphemy actually means. Okay, I don't get this. I don't know if they're trying to say, well, we need to stop any kind of talking about Islam, any kind of talking about Allah or any of the gods, criticizing gods, or even, mentioning anything bad about them. So while they are saying something correct, that we shouldn't go and attack Muslims, I think this is trying to get the censorship of anti-Islamic rhetoric in through the back door.
This reminds me of 1984. With Newspeak, you can't talk about Big Brother. You get taken into the back in a lot of stuff, like controlling the way you think. I think it's really seen in a negative side for most people.
I think, from my perspective, with what you were just saying, those last stops, that this could also be where you'll notice the humanists, who are supposed to be proactively for the welfare of men and women and mankind in general, they don't seem to be too concerned with any other religion. They're only concerned with Islam. So is it possible that their concern with Islam is that they actually understand the ideology, and what they're trying to do is temper it, because it's the only ideology that, when you blaspheme against it in their parlance and in their understanding of what blasphemy is, because now blasphemy is open-ended. Anything in the Islamic parlance can now be inferred or interpreted as blasphemy, that in this way they're trying to slow the reaction against Islam down, because they're now recognizing more information against Islam is being manifest through various organizations, entities and academic researching, that they may perceive a reaction from Islam, because it's the only religion that behave in a very much violent, belligerent, bloodthirsty way. So by making mention of this, they're preempting a backlash against the information that's exposed in it, perhaps. What do you think?
Nobody else? Come on, I can't be only me. Any other opinions on this?
Well,
I didn't see
overall,
what-
oh, sorry, Rob.
No, you go.
Yeah, thank you. So overall, like, it seems that at least there's an attempt, or at least there's a start to distinguish between, the terminology, at least, because Islamophobia, which was, I think, coined in the 1970s, has become a weaponized term by fundamentalist Islamic extremists, that, oh, you're attacking my views. They'll use Islamophobia and sort of hide and use like the freedoms of expression laws, basically, the sort of like shut down the discussion using the term Islamophobia, even though that term itself should be replaced with anti-Muslim bigotry instead of Islamophobia, because it kind of shuts down the discussion that, you can't criticize Islam. So it also, as a result, even shuts down what ex-Muslims have to say, that, we can't talk about our experiences because, we get shut down by this. So I'm at least happy that there's a start. This is sort of like an igniting there's some progress, that, there's differentiation between the ideology as well as, the people themselves. Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, what was I going to say? Yeah, I wasn't clear on that language. It seemed to be a bit ambiguous there, Stops, on the news article. So it wasn't clear to me if the humanists are suggesting that there's a link with sort of anti-Muslim bigotry or Islamophobia, if they want to call it that, and blasphemy, what exactly that meant. So I don't know if I missed it, or if it just wasn't clear from what you were saying.
No, this is, I think, intentional. I think this is exactly the idea. This is why I asked the question in the end. Is it that they are trying to get blasphemy as a punishable offense in through the back door again? This is exactly my question, because I don't understand what it is that they are saying when they are saying, well, it's the prohibiting blasphemy law that is generating anti-Muslim hatred. And
yes, prohibiting. Yes, weird. I get it. Yes. So Islam in Muslim countries, especially even Pakistan, and I think Saudi Arabia, there's the blasphemy law, and even with Islamic ideology, there's a blasphemy law where killing of apostates or critics is justified. So I think this is against blasphemy law. This is against, it's taking a stand against blasphemy law, which has had detrimental effects on the opinion of the world at large against the Muslim community, because many Muslims aren't even aware of these blasphemy laws. And yeah, so I think it's also like against these so-called blasphemy laws, blasphemy being anything from criticizing Muhammad to, criticizing his companions as well. So blasphemy is not only you cannot criticize Muhammad, you can't even criticize his companions either. So I think I kind of get a positive vibe in the sense that this is, anti-Islamic blasphemy laws. So that's what I'm getting out of this.
Well, a law prohibiting blasphemy. I mean, what is that?
Like a law, it says a law prohibiting blasphemy? Or what does the sentence say?
A law prohibiting blasphemy. So blasphemy is saying something against the God, right?
Right, yeah. Against God, Muhammad, Prophet.
for me, it's God. Okay, it's been extended now to include Muhammad for some odd reason. But for me, blasphemy is always blaspheming. In other words, saying something bad about a god or goddess
Right.
or something.
Yeah.
Now, if you are prohibiting, no, blasphemy is the prohibition. No, hang on, I'm getting confused myself now. Blasphemy is simply saying this, right?
Yeah.
And a blasphemy law means it is prohibiting this. And now this is a law prohibiting blasphemy. So in other words, it's a law which does not allow you to say something bad about a god. So this is like a blasphemy law. Now, how is prohibiting saying something bad about a god linked to anti-Muslim? I don't see this. I don't understand really what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
So I don't understand what Humanist UK has called for, what kind of action they actually want. And
Yeah.
this is why I'm saying, this is why this is so important for us to always go and make 100% clear that I'm not going to condemn or criticize a Muslim for being a Muslim. If a Muslim is being an arsehole, I'm going to criticize this arsehole the same way as I criticize any arsehole, but not because he's a Muslim. And this is the difference. And this is something that a lot of people don't understand, because they're saying, yeah, but you do criticize Muslims. Well, yeah, but only if they're being idiots. But I would criticize them if they were Scientologists or anything. You know, if somebody's being an idiot, then I will criticize them for being an idiot, not for being a Muslim. And that is the difference.
The
So
language
this is why
does, yeah. The language does need to be very clear, because the way it's very ambiguous, like what are they exactly, at least they need to clarify if they're next time, or they have to clarify. Someone needs to ask them, you have to clarify what you're going for.
Again, this is why I thought, okay, let me leave this as a number one news item for today, because number one, it says exactly what we are about. That we are trying not to confuse Islam and Muslims, and that we're always very clear in differentiating between the two, and that we're always saying, okay, look, we are criticizing political Islam. In other words, I couldn't give a continental damn if somebody wants to pray that he thinks or she thinks that they're going to be, I don't know, for salvation and eternal bliss and things like that. If somebody wants to believe that, I don't care. Anybody can believe what they want to believe. It's just, I don't want this to influence or affect me in any way. This is where I get, where I go and give pushback. And this is the difference. And this is what people need to understand, that we are not about criticizing the people, but the ideology. And if we are criticizing people, then it's because they're being dicks or cunts or whatever you want to call them. So, all right, any other comment on this? Nothing. Then what is the next section? The next segment. Krazy Komments. Now, Krazy Komments is something that we go and we look for in videos where people say the funniest things in the comments. And this is something that we are pointing out just as a section, because a lot of times it gives you food for thought, and this is what we're doing. So today we're going to be looking at a video with Shabir Yusuf. So we're going to be looking at a person who says Shabir Yusuf and then strong arm. Now, everybody who knows Shabir Yusuf knows his reasoning way of argumenting and knows that there is not a lot of substance there, knows that what he does is he waits for you to make a claim and says, okay, but now you need to provide the evidence for that, which is what we call the Shabir shuffle, because he always tries to reverse the burden of proof by saying, well, there's a God, and then you say, well, no, there isn't, and then he says, well, now you need to prove that there isn't, forgetting that he is the one who made the original claim or something. So, but a lot of Muslims love the guy. I don't know why. So we all know that he's not very strong in the way that he's arguing. And I think the best one was still with Sarah. When Sarah really, he completely annihilated the poor guy. And this is something that I don't think he's ever recovered from. So this was a classic. And then it says Shabir the legend. Now, I don't know why Mr. Goldstar thinks that Shabir is a legend. I mean, I don't think he makes any points. I don't know what... Does anybody know anything more about Shabir?
Just looking at this out of context, these might as well just came out of a WWE video, considering the names for his debutante's entrance.
But there's nothing really there. Has anybody watched more of Shabir Yusuf? No, so I think we're all looking at the same level of information.
Legend. Oh my.
I think the problem is that they just don't. If you ask them why he's a legend, right? If you ask for substance, you wouldn't get anything, right? It's, as we'll point out in the video, there's sophistry and rhetoric here, and obfuscation. I always pronounced it incorrectly. He's an obscurantist. I think that's a better way of putting it. Obscurantism, which is specifically designed to not be clear, right? To be ambiguous, to throw people off, and we'll hear that. And so these guys hear some rambling here with a few like keywords thrown in. Evidence. We've got to have a criteria, and those words sound good to gullible Muslim ears, but everything surrounding those words doesn't have any substance, as we'll see in the video. And so these people are just sort of hypnotized into thinking. But if you had to ask them, as always, right, you wouldn't get anything of interest.
That's a good expression, being hypnotized into this. And this is, I think, what is the case, yeah. And there's a good question here by Izzy. Can people believe what they want to believe? Well, this is such a huge topic. You can talk for hours about this. Because on the one hand, you cannot decide that you want to believe that you are now a homosexual or something. On the other hand, we all know that this thing with the dress with the blue and the grey and the black or silver, gold or whatever colored dress, we know that there is a huge discrepancy, that people believe something which they decide that they will believe. And then it's only until somebody shows them, no, it's actually not quite wrong. Or the two grey squares that actually are the same color, but if they're presented in a different background, they look totally different. Or the experiment that we saw from Veritasium, where he had this ladder that is turning. You cannot get your mind to accept that the ladder is actually turning. You cannot accept it. It will go backwards and forwards, no matter how many times you see it. Your brain simply will not allow this. And you cannot make yourself believe some things, and some things you can make yourself believe. So this is a huge question, I think. Okay, here's a good one. This is... I don't understand how people do this. This is how Muslims convince themselves that they are right. If 10 people are saying that there is nothing in the box, 10 people are saying there is a cat in the box. In other words, you have two identical criteria for an opposite statement. Then the claim of the later group will overweight previous one. Why? Because now they have made it specific that it's a cat that is inside the box, which in turn would mean that those people may have heard or seen the cat jumping into the box. Otherwise, why are they so specific about the detail of something present in the box? So this is, for me, such a typical statement that I see again and again and again, that they are simply making a claim and then talking themselves into believing that this is actually warranted. And it's not. I mean, 10 people saying there's nothing, 10 people saying there is. It's the same level of certainty, which is zero. Now, either the people opened the box and saw that there is nothing inside and closed it, so they're 100% sure that there's nothing in the box, or people, like this guy says, yes, they saw a cat jumping in. But from the information that we have, it is absolutely identical. The 10 people saying it's empty could be right, and the people saying there's a cat could be right. So it's 50-50. There's nothing that distinguishes the one statement from the other. So telling yourself, well, they are more specific and therefore right, is crazy. And this is why I thought this is such a good comment.
Yeah, this was in relation to a analogy that somebody brought up who was discussing with Shabir, and he basically said, "Hey, if you have a box, and in the hypothetical, there's either a cat or there isn't a cat. Those are the only two options." He misspoke slightly, but what he meant to say, because he said, would you be able to tell if there was a cat in the box? And there are, of course, ways you could tell. But if you were a normal human and you were just presented with a box that was on the ground, and you both had to make a decision about either of those propositions, it's equally likely, obviously assuming the box is the size that could fit a cat, then it's equally likely, if you don't have any other information, then it's either proposition at that moment in time, because you don't have any other background information, is equally likely. And so you're absolutely right. The fact that this person is saying, hey, the 10 people afterwards, just because they claim specific, that's a non sequitur, means it doesn't follow. His conclusion that the later group would outweigh the previous one based on the fact that they're saying something specific doesn't mean that it's true. You could say that it was a black and white cat with spots and it was 15 years old, right? That's even more specific. Does that make the cat more likely to be in the box? Because I've now added extra specific criteria, because his criteria there was specific. So does it mean that the more specific you are, the more likely that is that there's a cat in the box? Well, clearly not, right? We can immediately see the logic doesn't run through there. But that was because there was this analogy that was given to Shabir, who kind of semi-dodged. So we're not going to be doing that video tonight because the audio was too bad. So we're going to be doing another one. But you'll kind of hear some sort of reasoning. And we'll talk more about when we actually get to the video.
But I've found this so telling, because I've seen this process of reasoning. I see this so much, that people are bringing up make-believe reasons for believing something, and they think that they are making a fundamental difference here, that this is profound, that this is significant in some way, when
it's just an error in thinking, right? And what we'd want to do with somebody like that is point out the error in thinking. Using reductio ad absurdum is often a good way, like I just did, and say, okay, so if your criteria is specific, if I gave you something that was more specific than a cat, i.e., an old dog of 15 years old or whatever the case is, or a young puppy that's green and black, for example, or whatever it is, or painted, or has one eye missing, does that make it, because I've given you something more specific, is it more likely that exists than whatever you've given, or that nothing exists? No, it isn't. So it's just and it's just one of those things. We just want to point out or show somebody like this the error in their thinking, that's not a logical progression.
And it's the gumball problem all over. Because just because you are saying it's empty, or I don't know if there's a cat, doesn't mean I'm saying it's empty. So this is another thing that we need to point out, because a lot of people think that if I say, well, we don't know that it's in there, so it might be empty, that I'm saying it is empty. No, it is not. Just because I'm not saying there is, I don't know. Just because I'm saying I don't know, I'm not saying it is the opposite. That's another thing a mistake that a lot of people make. I don't know if that was clear. And this is quite funny, amazing. I'm not Muslim, but I really enjoy listening to Muslims defend the faith because they always bring science with them.
Oh dear. Well, if he's not Muslim and he thinks that they're bringing science, then I think a little bit of help with what science is and why it's antithetical to Islam would probably be needed there.
This is probably a Muslim.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Do you think this one is a Muslim? The Muslims are always more logical.
Of course. This name kind of gives it away. Abdullah Kunti.
There's only one question to ask, right? In what way are they more logical, right? What do you mean by more? No, I wouldn't even go with more. What do you mean? Just in what way are they more logical, or what's your argument for that? Right, that's sort of a question. And now somebody has to think about why they said this. And if they were thinking clear, they go, okay, that's probably just my bias, right? I didn't have a good reason per se. I kind of leant in that direction, and his words kind of appealed to me, and that's why I thought it was more logical. And I didn't agree with the other guy, and that's why I thought it. And that, of course, wouldn't be a good reason. But it's always worth asking somebody like this who makes a general statement, what's your argument for that, or why do you believe that's the case?
And Sultan, I don't know, baby, Sultan, baby.
I really want to say babi, but this doesn't seem like
Ah, baby. Atheists reject the truth to have fun in this world and get away of responsibilities that will be carried out later on.
What fun am
Yeah.
I having right now?
This is, I mean, for me, it's the opposite. For me,
No.
it is exactly the opposite, because Muslims,
Huh?
Christians, Jews, they are the people who are saying, I'm not taking responsibility. It's Allah, it's God, it's Yahweh, it's all these other guys that are responsible for everything.
And I'm the max fun I've had is eat chicken, and that's about it, really. I've barely even tried pork. So I've even been accused of like, oh, you want to taste like haram and do all these haram things. If anything, I'm less tempted to do the haram things ever since leaving Islam, because, you know, it's like there's no red tape around anything. So it kind of goes to show that I really did not, it wasn't the world's temptations, if anything. It was, in fact, the opposite. Like, I just wanted to learn more, and then I found that Islam just doesn't stand.
Who used to do a lot of work in this region is Introverted Smiles. I haven't heard anything from a while. I think he stopped. He got too sidetracked. He used to do, in the beginning, he was very good at this, to show exactly how people came to him, because he was still very much in touch with the people. And he showed how different Muslims were accusing him of the different things. And he said, well, show me, tell me, come on, prove it to me. And he did a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah, I think sadly he sort of took a turn. If it's the same person, and I'm not following him anymore on Twitter, but it used to be it sort of changed to Mandalorian Smiles, and now his hobby horse is challenging or critiquing, or, to use the Muslim word, attacking ex-Muslims. Every time an ex-Muslim like Abdullah Samir or something says something, he's now very critical. If you didn't know better, you would think he was a Muslim. Again, I could be wrong, but that's as far as I got. So I think he's taken a completely different tack. He doesn't critique Islam at all now, and his now hobby horse is ex-Muslims. And that's Mandalorian Smiles now instead of Introverted Smiles. If I have the wrong person, then I'll humbly withdraw my thing. But that's what I understood to be the case, or at least the person that I was following with a similar name, because that other person, Introverted Smiles, I don't think that name certainly wasn't when I was looking for it on Twitter. So I think it's been changed, and now this is his new line of critique, so to speak.
But I remember at the beginning, I was a keen follower, and I thought a lot of him, the way that he argued, because he was very down to earth and always really giving, you know, the ground level argumentation line, and I quite enjoyed this. It's a pity that, I remember he was flip-flopping for quite some time. Then he went into this MGTOW, then he went into this other, and yeah. Okay, anyway. The last one, and this is quite brilliant. Mustafa, do you want to read this?
Oh, sure. Stephen, this is a Stephen Chaffin. Okay. In the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful, the thing I detests about atheists is they have arrogancy that is unparalleled. They claim there is no proof of Allah. At the same exact moment, those words come from a mouth that always allows them to eat food through, breathe air, and communicate. Drink a pure water, then that just so happens to be a necessity to sustain all of creation. Their bodies are covered in clothing made from cotton, which grows from the very same ground they're able to walk upon. And that ground is stable enough to support the very house they live in. And they wonder why Allah created hellfire for a certain people. He has subjected everything on this dunya to sustain you, and you can't even reason enough to notice it and deny the favors of our Lord. And you think he isn't just because he has prepared a place for people such as yourself. How ungrateful are they? Little do they reason. And the signs are endless. Warm sun hitting their backs as they deny, trees surrounding them that shades them, and those same trees are homes for creatures other themselves, etc. ... I'll stop here because I could have praised Allah all day for the favors He has bestowed upon us, and the mercy of Allah is rather you are the believer, you are a believer or a disbeliever, He still gives. Allahu Akbar.
What have you just read?
I enjoyed reading that, but this is the exact voice I would hear if I read a comment like this.
I agree with you. But it's so funny how people are able to convince themselves by defining this God into existence and saying, well, you know, we wouldn't have anything if not this Allah. This is this presuppositional argument, and there's no way that you could actually get to Him because there's nothing here. There's no evidence. There's no substance. There's nothing. He just says, I think, I want, and there is. That's it. End of story. This is quite funny. So I thought, yeah, this is quite good. Any comments on this?
Yeah, no, overall in general, I was just like sitting here and I was like having too much of a giggle to actually comment on anything.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, so I just muted myself so you guys don't hear me laughing hysterically.
I was laughing as well, so it was quite good. Okay, if there are no further comments, then I would suggest, Nick, why don't you go for it?
All right. So today I got a special thing where it's not just going to be me speaking. I want to have everyone discuss these points. So let me just get this in a slideshow format so it's easier for the audience to read. So basically just a continuation of last week's topic, mainly on biology. I found a few nice discussion points. So Mustafa, do you want to do the honors of reading?
Sure thing. Oversleeping is caused by Satan urinating in one's ear. Narrated by Abdullah. A person was mentioned before the Prophet, peace be upon him, and he was told that he kept on sleeping till morning, and he had not got up for the prayer. The Prophet said, Shaitan urinated in his ears. Sahih al-Bukhari, 221, 245.
All right, so before I give my opinion, I'll let you guys take your shot at it. What's your opinion on this?
My take on this is, are we Satan's toilet?
Yeah.
I think for me personally, when I read something like this, it's the stupidity of how many people did not observe prayer. So how could Satan have gone to so many ears in one night and urinated? Second of all, how much liquid or fluids had he consumed in order to produce so much urine for all those years? And three, this is yet the stupidity of Islam, not able to understanding that they're attributed physical realities to the spiritual dimension. That's the whole point of it being a spiritual dimension. There's nothing physical there, yet they're attributing, or Muhammad's attributing, physical realities to the spiritual dimension. That's what I take from that.
Yeah, like for me, like even if it's metaphorical, what if someone's working a night shift and they sleep in the morning? Like, are they going to get Satan pissing in their ears for working?
I don't know how anybody can, I don't know, take any of this serious. I mean, obviously this is supposed to make you feel bad, okay, but how can anyone hear this nowadays and not start giggling? That's the only thing you can do. You can only giggle. There's nothing else there. And then Muslims are angry if you start mocking them. Yeah, but this is the kind of thing that they are saying we need to take seriously because it's Sahih Bukhari.
Well,
and we need to take it serious. That's crazy.
Not only that, like the dirt in your nose, like basically the reasoning I found Muslims making this is your earwax. Like, so he pees in everybody's ear. And apparently there's, I don't know if it's a hadith or not, but like there's also a myth in the Muslim world that Shaitan or Satan shits in your nose. So that's why you have the dirt in your nose.
Wait, that earwax thing. that earwax thing, I just want to know, is Satan not drinking enough water where his actual piss is like wax?
Yeah, that's apparently the case.
Let's have it right, guys. Muhammad's taking the piss.
And why so religious is asking, okay, what happened before Islam? Well, Satan was always doing that. It's just we never had an explanation. It took Islam to come and explain to us, this is why we have earwax, because we are sleeping too long and Satan is just it's quite silly.
All right.
Rob, you want to comment on this, or is this beneath you?
No, I think you guys have done a good job there.
All right. So next one.
Narrated Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. The Prophet said, "Isn't the witness of a woman equal to half of that of a man?" The women said, "Yes." He said, "This is because of the deficiency of a woman's mind." Sahih al-Bukhari, 348, 826, and two other references here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I got
think
them.
this is quite relevant.
Yeah, so I got two more on that topic as well. So like when you guys are just done discussing this one, I'll move on to the other two.
Yeah, this is relevant because Stops and I recently did the review with James SC, who went on to the one of the, I don't know if it was Hamza's Den or one of the Muslim channels, and obviously there was 5 of them and one of him, and he brought up Surah 282 about witnesses for I think it's financial contract. So if you don't have if you can't find 2 men witnesses, to find 1 man and 2 women.
Yeah, that's actually what inspired me to get this specific
topic.
topic.
Oh, cool. Okay. So yeah, you do the other ones, then we can talk about it afterwards.
Yeah. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, "Were it not for Bani Israel, meat would not decay. And were it not for Eve, no woman would ever betray her husband." Sahih Bukhari 455, 611. Next one.
Presumably no man has ever betrayed his wife.
Yeah. His Lord,
well, of course, if Eve was not existent, then that would mean, I think Eve is metaphorically now every human being who is a female. So every female, no man would betray the wife if there would be no females. Well, duh.
Well, reasoning is weird. Anyway, his Lord called out to him, "Adam is from me that you are fleeing." Adam replied, "No, my Lord, but I feel shame before you." When God asked what was caused his trouble, he replied, "Eve, my Lord." Whereupon God said, "Now it is my obligation to make her bleed once every month." As she made this tree bleed, I also must make her stupid, although I created her intelligent, Halima, and must make her suffer pregnancy. Ibn Zayd continued, "Were it not for the affliction that affected Eve, the women of this world would not menstruate, and they would be intelligent, and when pregnant, give birth easily." Al-Tabari, Volume 1, page 280 to 281.
Okay, this is beyond silly, but we need to differentiate here. The first one was different from the second two. Okay, yeah. We need to take them in a different way, because the first one was relevant because it is part of the Quran and it shows the deficiency in general of the capability of women to be able to witness financial transactions.
Yeah, I'll go back to the first.
What we came across is that James brought up exactly this hadith, and they said, well, where is this found? And he made the mistake of saying, well, it's in the segment of menstruation in Bukhari. So what they did is they just went and said, because now the whole Quran, when speaking about women, is only talking about women during menstruation, not about women in menopause or before menstruation. No, they need to be during their period, that they go into the bank, and if they go into the bank during their period, they are silly and they forget everything, and that's why it takes 2 of them. It's such a dishonest tactic. It's such a silly way of argumenting. This is crazy. And yet, this is, in all honesty, all this Adnan Rashid was able to come up with, and everybody else was just nodding along, just like a bobblehead. This is why this hadith, or actually this group of 3 hadith, which all say the same thing, they all refer to, isn't the witness of a woman equal to half that of a man, which is a reference to the Quran, where it says exactly that. And all they're doing is they're confirming what the Quran insinuates, that women are more stupid than men.
Yeah, no, like for me, like I just think like if that's the case, there wouldn't be so many successful women in so many other fields. Like I think about my physics professor, who's a mechanical engineer in college, who's a mechanical engineer by trade, and she has a PhD in it to become a university professor. So like, in one can make that like that's a genetic anomaly or whatever, but like according to this hadith, but like in any case, it's not true that it's either 100% true or it's not when it comes to this stuff. And the fact that there's so many exceptions, like almost like every case is an exception to this, it just proves to me that this is false.
Yeah, totally. I mean, my wife is a financial controller. She did her MBA exactly in this topic. So this is totally ridiculous. I don't know where they get this from and why this was necessary. If you look at the bigger picture, again, we're looking at the story that I always propagate, is that the men are there to fight and the women are supposed to be in the background looking after the children and looking after the house and waiting until the men come back or not, until some other man marries them. And that is what they're supposed to do. And that is what they're supposed to be. And this is, I think, why they are being told, look, don't do anything. You are stupid anyway. You're worthless. You're useless. Go and just open your legs and then do the human incubator thing that you were made for. I think that's the only thing that this is propagating.
And Khadija, wasn't she Muhammad's first wife, and wasn't she the one who provided him with the financial know-how and everything?
You're not supposed to ask questions like this. This is what Reanimator just put in the chat. This is exactly the story, but you're not supposed to ask questions like that, because now you are destroying the story in Islam.
Yeah, but if you remember 2 years ago, Stops, I did a discussion on the show, presented an article that Islam, the whole of Islam, is predicated on the actions of Khadija. Khadija is the one that set up Islam because Muhammad did not know what was going on.
I remember, yeah.
Khadija knew everything about Allah, everything about Muhammad, and what Allah was going to do and what Allah was not going to do. She took Muhammad to Waraqah to verify his prophethood. He didn't know anything about it. And the irony is, if you remember how I concluded the show, the irony is that the richest, most affluent and intelligent woman in the Arabian Peninsula at the time, presumably because she was a businesswoman, is the woman that was the catalyst to enforce oppression on women after her death. She is the catalyst for all the woes in the Islamic world, if you go with the official narrative.
But yeah, no, I just want to get the other perspective. So where's Smart Cat when we need him?
Yeah, it's a pity he didn't make it today.
Yeah, because like I assume like this with whatever bias we have, this seems super ridiculous. Even reading it quite literally in our views. So like having the explanation from the other side, at least giving them a chance to explain something that we see as so ridiculous like that. I wanted to see if that could have happened today, but we're going to be on Discord later, right? So hopefully we can get more debate on this specific topic.
Yeah, but we need to understand that there's a lot of apologetics around the topic that women in general are more emotional and more about feelings and less about facts and things like that. And this is the way that they think that they can argue, and this is simply not true.
Everyone's about feelings, because look at the prison population. Everyone in there went off of emotion and got themselves into prison. Majority of them, at least. So everyone can be emotional at times. It's not a gender-based thing. And to say that someone is half the mind of the person next to them because they ate an apple, in my view, is kind of ridiculous.
And isn't like aren't emotions like tied? I'm not an expert in psychology, but aren't emotions also tied somewhat to logic as well?
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
yeah.
Like-
Yeah, you.
No, not really.
Uh-huh.
It's if you know a little bit about the brain, if you go to the amygdala and
Yeah.
you know, and then you go to the prefrontal cortex, it's very different.
Right.
So
Okay.
if you have people, because there are people who have either been operated on or by birth have no prefrontal or no cortex at all, but they still have a personality, they still have feelings, they still have emotions. So the funny thing is, when you look at the personality, when you look at the way that consciousness works, even people without any part of that brain who are only left with the stem, they still react to outside stimulation. And this shows that the identity that we have is present in the old part of the brain, not the more modern part.
Right. Okay.
all right. So, would you guys like me to continue to the next set of passages that I have?
Yes, please. All right. Stages of development of embryo. Narrated Abdullah bin Masud. Allah's apostle, the true and truly inspired, said, the matter of the creation of a human being is put together in the womb of the mother in 40 days, and then he becomes a clot of thick blood for a similar period, and then a piece of flesh for a similar period. Sahih Bukhari 454, 430.
Yeah, no, we know that this is extremely false, because there's multiple stages, the trimesters and such. I don't know how we're supposed to take this, but we know that it's extremely different than what's written here biologically, even in a metaphorical. If I was trying to read this metaphorically.
Yeah, sounds legit. Yeah, this is, is basically 40 days. There's this weird obsession with 40 days, at least with like Islamic and even like Abrahamic texts. Like there's this weird obsession with 40 days. Like why 40 days?
Yeah, like it would make more sense if they used like 28 days with the lunar calendar in reference to that.
Yeah, this is so weird, like why they would use 40 days, but
Well, if you go back to the Greeks, there was one, I can't remember who it was, who said there's something about the 40 days, because remember, they only knew what was observable at the time. So if there was a woman, with a miscarriage, then this is what they saw. And if they thought of this time period, and then there was this miscarriage, and they said, well, this is exactly what we are seeing. In other words, it's nothing is happening in the first 40 days, and then if you have a miscarriage, then you have this lump of flesh that comes out. And this is what we see reflected in the Quran, nothing else.
Yeah, so basically just what the observation was of the time. But
well, plus projection, okay, plus
right.
What they thought, and plus some interpretation, and then add a sprinkle of God in their creation and things like that. And then you get to this weird concoction that you see there, which is totally against anything that we see in reality.
Yeah. Sometimes, like, I can't even put it into words how, like, inaccurate this is, because, like, even if it's something that's observed at the time, this is supposedly the word of God, so it has to be right. Society shouldn't be changing it.
I think we can go to anybody else has anything on this?
If it's a no, I'll go to the next one.
All right. Late text assignment. Narrated Anas bin Malik. The Prophet said, Allah puts an angel in charge of the uterus, and the angel says, "O Lord, it is semen. O Lord, it is now a clot. O Lord, it is now a piece of flesh." And then if Allah wishes to complete its creation, the angel asks, "O Lord,
Will it be a male or a female?
All right. So yeah, scientifically speaking, what happens is when the sperm and the egg fertilize, you get the genetic code is shared immediately, determining the gender immediately after conception. So it doesn't wait for like the flesh and all that to develop. The moment it fertilizes, it's determined, depending on the chromosomes.
I can only imagine how many angels are there inside different, wombs at this moment.
It's almost as if it's a pagan religion.
Yeah, there's a lot. I remember. I remember the number 12. I think it was Klingshaw who actually came up with this, who counted up all the different angels who are doing the various things for you, and he said we've constantly got about 12 angels floating around us.
No, there's a lot. I think.
I mean, the other thing, of course, is now they're just claiming that it's a miracle birth. Is this the case for everybody, or just one person, or what?
And the whole thing is, look, this is a common mistake, all right? Oh Lord, it is semen, okay? It's this nutfa, this liquid, this water that we see again and again and again, because they did not realize there is something in this white stuff that is coming out of the penis. They never realized there was something there because it's too small. Now the oocyte, the female egg, because you have the oh my God, you have haploids, which are the two gametes, okay? And the female one is the largest cell in the human body. This one you can actually see. But the male sperm, which there are millions in the semen, they did not realize, and this is why you see this again and again, the semen, this liquid, this water, this whatever you want to call it, and this is what they use. And now, for a Muslim to try and argue that any of this is in any way correct is impossible. This is why I was so shocked when this Imran, who is supposed to be a medical doctor, went along with this. And he even said the sperm becomes semen. And this is what he said literally. And this is why I was so shocked when he said this. We know it's wrong. So why not admit it?
Don't forget who ejaculates first determines the sex, I thought. If a woman ejaculates first, when it says look like, Muslims don't know whether that's in reference to in physical appearance, that is, say, the facial features and such, or whether looks like in the sense of the sexual determination, whether male or female. That is to say, if the father ejaculated first, it will either look like him in appearance, or it will be his appearance in the sense that it will be a male. So Muslims can't even decide on that either.
Okay, Mustafa, do your thing and show Sandra exactly what it is.
Okay, narrated Anas Abdullah bin Salam heard the arrival of the Prophet at Medina. He came to him and said, I am going to ask you about 3 things which nobody knows except a prophet. Number 1, what is the first portent of the hour? Number 2, what will the first meal taken by the people of paradise? Number 3, why does a child resemble its father? And why does it resemble its maternal uncle? Allah's apostle said, Gabriel has just now told me of their answers. Abdullah said, Gabriel amongst the angels is Gabriel from amongst all the angels is the enemy of the Jews. Allah's apostle said, the first portent of the hour will be a fire that will bring together the people from the east to the west. The first meal of the people of paradise will be extra lobe. Is that lobe? Caudate lobe of a fish liver. As for the resemblance of the child to its parent, if a man has sexual intercourse with his wife and gets discharged first, the child will resemble the father. And if the woman gets discharged first, the child will resemble her. Sahih al-Bukhari 455, 546.
Yeah, so I brought this up just because it was related to what Stops said before. But
And also,
The question I'd ask is, how does this guy know what the answers is if only Muhammad's supposed to know?
Well, if you take everything apart, then of course, if you ask three things, Gabriel was not the enemy of the Jews, was it? I mean, come on. The fire that will bring together people from the east to the west, that is, I don't know what he's talking about. Paradise will be just a loaf of fish liver. I don't know why this is so.
that does not sound very savory. That does not sound very savory at all.
No, it doesn't. And now the final one. Okay, this is quite interesting. Now again, Imran makes a big deal out of this, and he says, "Well, I'm a medical doctor. I know exactly what I'm talking about." He says, "Well, actually, what the Quran says, it's not what it says here." And that is the one who has the discharge first, or orgasm, or whatever you want to call it. No. It's that the wife can also contribute, which is a novelty at the time. And this means that you have dominant and recessive genes. And this is what it refers to. So that there are genes which will be dominant in some cases and in other cases not. And he totally forgets and skips the correlation, the context of who has the orgasm first. He says, no, this is just a reference to dominant genes, and that's it. So it's not honest, and here we see exactly what is being intended in the Quran, and that is, it depends on the orgasm, which of course is nonsense.
Well, can they stop being so poetic and like metaphorical? Because how the hell am I supposed to get that from reading this?
Well, now keep in mind, like, it's the poetry that catches the emotion, you know? They don't want you to think logically. It's always the emotion. So poetry gets the emotion.
No radiologist pulls up this quote to check what the gender of the baby is.
Yeah, I think that, Mustafa, you made a good point, right? I think this is originally all poetry to dull the senses and remove the critical thinking. And this has come through today as if this is supposed to represent reality in any way. And I think it's quite clear that this is just mythical nonsense that might have been fascinating to ignorant Muslims in the desert Arabian times, and or may have sat around a fire and just told stories and, just switched off their brains and so forth. And that might have been a reason these sort of things came up. But to suggest that anybody takes these seriously today just invites a little bit of critical examination of their critical faculties, shall we say.
And another thing to point out maybe is that there is not even an answer to the question, why does it resemble the maternal uncle? This would be something that you could answer in using genetics, but it's not being answered because the maternal uncle is not involved in the orgasm.
You don't know that for sure?
Come on.
Yeah, no, I've seen videos somewhere. I want to keep this PG, so I won't mention them, but I'm pretty sure it's possible.
All right. Next one. Nobody knows what is in the womb. Narrated Ibn Umar, Allah's apostle, peace be upon him, said, keys of the unseen knowledge are 5 which nobody knows but Allah. Nobody knows what will happen tomorrow. Nobody knows what is in the womb. Nobody knows what he will gain tomorrow. Nobody knows at what place he will die. And nobody knows when it will rain. Sahih al-Bukhari, 217, 149.
Well, apparently he doesn't know what meteorology is, and he doesn't know what medicine is.
Some of them are vague as well. What will happen tomorrow? I'll bet my life, everything I have, that the sun will rise. That's at least one thing. And when I say rise, obviously the earth will rotate such that the sun appears to rise over the horizon. So I know that will happen tomorrow, one way. Whether there's clouds or not, the earth will likely rotate. And I think we'll all bet everything we have, right? The probability of that happening is so high as to be, as close to, a fact of the matter as one can get. So that's one thing. Depends what you mean by a nose in the womb, right? I think today it's very easy to find out what's in the womb. That doesn't take much medical knowledge. What you'll gain tomorrow? Well, hopefully if you wake up tomorrow, you'll gain at least some more air. Oxygen would be the first thing you'll probably gain tomorrow morning. And nobody knows the place you'll die. That's probably the only thing that is probably true out of those three. So 1 out of 5, nobody knows when it will rain. I think people have a good idea of when it'll rain now, and there's high probability. So 1 out of 5, in my view, is pretty poor. So again, if this is Allah saying this or Muhammad saying this, then 20% hit rate is pretty poor. I think any one of us could do better than that, and probably people at that time did better than that as well.
I think it's the bed. 9 out of 10 people die in bed, don't they?
Good question. I don't know. I'll have a look on that.
And not only that, I think the gain it's talking about, I think they're referring to financial gain, but it doesn't specify that. Like, even if you think of financial gain, it's more like, unless you have investments, that's the only time it's unpredictable. But if you have an expected salary, then yeah, you know what you're gaining tomorrow. If tomorrow is
the gain, I think, is the blessing of Allah. It's the reward that you will gain tomorrow. I think this is what they're talking about here.
Okay, no, blessing, yeah, there's a point system with blessing. I nearly forgot about that.
So, but in all, it's exactly what Rob says. This is a piss poor show that somebody like Muhammad will be so ignorant and so ridiculously stupid that nobody will understand. I mean, he's supposed to have a direct line to Allah. So if he asks Allah a question, then Allah should be able to answer this, and he can't. So there's something wrong here.
And what's funny is that, like, whether it's, even though this may have been said in the 7th century, documented in the 9th century, but even then it's, like, a lot of civilizations, like, had answers to some of these questions and had made advancements. So this does look like someone, like, in the middle of a desert, there's nothing, and then they're making these, assumptions.
Yeah. All right, so I'll move on to the next one.
Non-Muslims have, oh my god, and I use 7 intestines. Okay. Ibn Umar reported Allah's messenger, may peace be upon him, as saying that a non-Muslim eats in 7 intestines, but a Muslim eats in 1 intestine. Sahih al-Muslim 235113. Okay, I have to double check if I have 7 intestines. Now I'm getting scared.
What gibberish is this?
So I have a question. What if you convert? Who takes away the 7 intestines?
Exactly. How the hell am I going to get rid of the intestines?
And if you leave, do you get more intestines than what you have?
I never felt like heavier. If anything, I lost weight on the way. So when I left Islam,
that's because you got more intestines to digest your food.
That's a good point. That's a good point. It has nothing to do with me working out or fixing my diet or anything. No, it's the 7 intestines.
Well, there's a whole story behind it. And by the way, Rob has just put a link, the cause of death, but not the place of death. So I don't know. I read somewhere that most people die in bed, whatever. But the thing is, with the 7 intestines, there's a story behind this, that somebody came to Muhammad, and he was a black guy, and he said, give him a glass of milk. Do you want another one? Yes, I'll have another one. And he had another one and another one, and he had 7. And then somebody says, why can he drink 7 glasses of milk? Well, he has 7 intestines. This is the whole point. This is the story behind it.
Yeah, and just to say stops, I just had a quick look here. It does say home is the most common place of death, at least in the US. So whether that's in bed or just at home.
Yeah, I read this somewhere. I can't remember where or what. No, I can't even remember whether this was like reliable or this was. I can't even remember. Something like that.
No doubt, you'll have scholars who will be viciously debating this, whether you have 7 intestines and so forth, and Muslims have 1. Of course, it's unscientific, but I'm sure they will take up endless hours debating gibberish like this in a vain effort to try and convince themselves and perhaps other non-critical people that there's any veracity to this gibberish statement.
Yeah. It's very difficult to say Bastil Jiba because you automatically follow into the routine of saying the normal name. If you have this video, Islam's Best Answer to Evolution, animated, this would really be interesting to have something to look at this. Do you have a link or something, or do I really need to go and... Okay, let me copy this and I'll look for it and I'll see if we can do this for next week. Okay.
What's next?
The oh my goodness, different races are made up of different types of earth. Narrated Abu Musa al-Ash'ari that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Indeed, Allah Most High created Adam from a handful that he took from all of the earth. So the children of Adam, in according with the earth, some of them come red and white and black, and between that and the thin, the thick, the filthy, and the clean." Jamiat al-Tirmidhi, 544-2955.
So is that the best way to create Adam, from dirt?
But I thought all human beings came from Adam and Eve. So how did he make them from different colored dirt if we all came from one parenthood?
And which color of dirt was Adam made from? It doesn't specify this. And, what's with the red, white, black? Between that, the thin dirt, there's a thick dirt, there's filthy dirt, and the clean dirt?
This looks like he's selecting something from OnlyFans or Pornhub.
Well, I think he's saying that Adam was created from dirt, and then everybody else was a child of Adam, so presumably came about through "quote unquote" natural means. Well, according to that other hadith, unless the angels are speaking to Allah about how they're going to be created. But again, then that would be a special creation event or a miracle event. So presumably that's, I suppose, Muslims, if we're charitable, might just say that's just metaphorical. The previous one that you read about this, but this one is clearly pointing to Adam being a miracle event. But then everything after that, presumably, although it's not clear here, presumably came from Adam, not from a handful of dirt, but through natural means, presumably.
And I think this was, this is a weird explanation of like, how come there are different, how come we don't look alike if they're all related to Adam? And I think the red definitely is referring to Byzantine Romans or Syrians specifically, because I know in another text, Syrians are described as pink-skinned. I think it was Tabari or something like that. Or Ibn Mikhnaf, that they described Syrians as with like pink complexion. So I'm guessing like this is what they're referring to when it comes to like the red. But I don't get the thin and the thick, or the filthy and the clean.
Yeah, this is quite weird. And by the way, why so religious? Adam was created in paradise, sent down. It's not entirely clear that there's a discussion going on, so there's no consensus whether paradise is on earth or not, and whether it was. Some people say yes, some people say no. Nobody really knows because it's so vague. People have never been able to determine which is what.
And wasn't paradise like the term taken from the Persian word firdaus, which was garden?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm guessing like it could be on Earth. Like that's the.
No, it can't be.
The thing is, we don't know. I mean, this is one of the possibilities, yes, but is it for sure? We don't know.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
Can I just add? Well, we do know it's in heaven, if you don't mind me saying, because the angels are there. They live in the heavenly realm. Satan was up there, and then he was sent down. So when you look at the whole language and the fact that the angels were present and the angels were asked to bow down, well, the angels don't live on earth. The angels live in the spirit realm with Allah. So you can clearly deduce, using that text, that it was all in heaven, the spirit realm, before he was sent down to earth, the physical realm. So that still goes back to what I've been saying for many years. Islam has a problem with attributing spiritual realities to the physical dimension. So how can dirt be in heaven?
Yeah, that leaves us with a lot of holes in the narrative itself.
Yeah. So that's it for my quotes. But yeah, like I was expecting to have a bit more of a debate style thing to ask questions on here, but I actually found these very confusing and wanted to discuss them on air, essentially, as a debate. Because, yeah, no, it's quite intriguing how they have all these issues.
Well, the thing is, you chose things which I don't think you can actually discuss, because thinking back of what it is, I mean, they are so blatantly wrong, they are so blatantly ridiculous that there is not much that you can discuss. You can only look at them, you can only snigger, and you can only mock them, but there's nothing else that you can do with them. So there is nothing contentious here. It is so obviously wrong that you can't really discuss them. I don't know if even a Muslim will have the audacity to say, well, that is the way that it is. You have to wait 40 days before you know whether it's female or male. I don't know whether there is a Muslim who is actually capable of arguing this case. I have no idea.
Yeah, no, we're getting a few comments from a few people as well, with someone like Benny, who thinks that we're having a little bit of issue on here, but like I couldn't find any issue, I couldn't find any issue with the science that pushes against this. But if let's say me, who is an agnostic, and I was to get converted, they got to make stuff up that's at least believable.
Okay, Nick, thank you very much for this. And if you have more, if you're going to carry on collecting stuff, always welcome. We can always have this Hadith corner on the Gin and Tonic Show, because we're not really paying much attention to it. We're mostly focusing on the Quran. But this is always interesting to see, because people are making the claim that the Hadiths are there to explain the Quran. So if this is the way that the Quran is being explained, then this is a sorry lot. I mean, it's exactly, science has stolen all of Islam's miracles and debunked the rest. Okay. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I just saw this. Exactly correct. All right. Thanks, Nick. Shall we go and do a video? Because Rob has found a very interesting video. And it's not a long thing, so we should be able to fit it in. Do you want to drive it, Rob?
And then, I actually have to step out for a bit as well. But, thank you guys for having me on. I'll be back in the Discord chat.
Take care, Nick.
Right, thanks, Nick.
See you later.
See you.
Thank you for your contribution, Nick.
All right, so if we're ready to go. So is there a creator? This should be a Yusuf with an atheist. I don't know if he's actually agnostic or not. I think I've heard of this guy, but I may have met him. I might have. I can't remember. So it's only 13 minutes, so we'll see where we get. Again, if you guys hear something that Shabir says that's nonsense, which will probably be very likely and very quick, then just shout out and I'll stop it. Otherwise, I'll stop it when I hear something. So here we go.
Able to locate him in the natural world.
Whoa, that's a little bit fast, even for me. Let's slow that down to 1.25.
My view is, but at the same time, I'm thinking, wait a minute, if I have nothing in the natural world to establish the existence of a creator, how then do I know there is a creator?
Okay, so that's an interesting question. If you have nothing, he's presupposing there's nothing in the world to establish a creator. Well, in Islam, presumably the Quran is one way to establish that. Miracles are another. Prophecies are another. So presumably, if he thinks that Allah has in some way at least interfered with or communicated with or had some interaction with the natural world, then in principle there is a way that we can establish whether there's a creator, especially if there's no evidence where we would expect it. So if there's claims made that the Quran is from God, or that Muhammad spoke to, an angel in the cave, or whatever the case may be, and we see no good reasons to believe that. In fact, we see bad reasons for believing that. In fact, it's more likely that humans made this up, then that would be evidence against the God.
Now, my logic was leading me to a certain destination. That being, okay, now I have confidently convinced myself that a creator, if there is one, is certainly not to be found in the natural world. Okay. Agreed. Right. Well, if he is not to be found in the natural world, how then am I going to establish the existence of a creator? Right.
Why?
Second step came.
Sorry, I don't understand. Why would he have convinced himself that if there is a creator, it can't be part of the natural world? Why? I don't understand that. Why is he making this claim? I mean, if a creator is creating in the natural world, then it should be part of the natural world. You can't be creating in the natural world something if you are outside the natural world. How's that supposed to work?
He's obviously taking the Islamic narrative already, which is Allah's not part of his creation, and so that's presumably what he means, that he's not part of the natural world, right? So he's already starting with that view in mind. So he's not starting from a neutral position of, I'm not sure about this, or I'm undecided, let me investigate. He's definitely not doing that, and he never has, very likely, right? So he's starting with his biases already in the view, and that's evident, as you quite rightly point out, by this particular statement.
And yeah, I like that you actually pointed that out, because I've seen Muslims like just sneak that in and say that on, it's a method of like sneaking in without like detection. But and I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Stops, that you pointed that out.
Logically speaking, if there is a creator, yes, and the definition, I use the word definition of a creator, is one who is all-powerful, one is the one who created everything. I said, well, if that is the case, then...
Okay, well, there's a couple of ifs there, right? A creator wouldn't necessarily need to be all-powerful, or a creator, if you just, again, as somebody pointed out there, right, Shabir sort of argues this view, kind of a deist view, although, as Stops has pointed out there as well, if you just listen to the language, you can see that it's not just a deist view, but if you don't pick it up in the moment, then it sounds very much deistic in that sense, just talking about a creator. But all a creator needs to do is have the power to create a universe. That's essentially the one attribute that a creator must have. Everything else is debatable. Right? Did that creator, because again, we're not talking about a specific one, right? He's just talking or attempting to, or pretending to talk about a creator in general. So it's not a case that a creator must be all powerful. It could just be that it's created the universe. Whatever other attributes the creator has would be, open to discussion, and you would need to discover, or it would have to be revealed in some way or other. So that's not the case that he needs to be all powerful. So we certainly wouldn't agree with that. Or the better way to put that is, okay, so what's the argument that it's necessary for the creator to be all-powerful? I do agree that it's necessary for a creator to create, if there is one, but further than that, everything else is open for discussion, or at least you need to present an argument for it, assuming that we're taking this hypothetical that a creator has created the universe.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. But the thing is, notice how he is sliding in these definitions as though they have been established, as though these are all agreed upon. He's just sliding them in there. No, they're not. Those are his personal claims.
Yeah. So we can go with a hypothetical, but I think what we'd have to do here is stop him when we hear him making claims or sliding in extra attributes or features or whatever the case is that isn't necessary, or at least if he thinks it is, then he needs to present an argument and not just make a very sly assertion toward in that direction.
Then logic is dictating to me that in contrast to a creator, I would necessarily be the inferior one. Right. Yeah, not in a negative way. Okay, but I would be.
What other way is there if you're inferior? Is that a positive thing? Not in a negative way. Well, tell me when you're inferior and it's positive. Typically, inferior is in most cases, if not all, certainly most cases, it's a negative connotation to it. But again, in what sense are you inferior?
And this is exactly the point. Okay, if I can just elaborate just quickly, I can build a machine which is much more powerful than me. So then I am the inferior one, because I am creating something that is stronger, but this is singular. And this is exactly the point that I like now, that Rob is making, that we are saying, okay, it all depends what you are talking about. And this is what he is neglecting completely.
Would be inferior because I am in the position of not knowing everything, in opposition to this being who knows everything.
Okay. So his view in being inferior is because he doesn't know everything, and he's presupposing the other being knows everything. Well, that's an argument that you need to establish, right? Exactly. If we're simply granting you a creator doesn't need to know everything. Creator just needs to know how to create whatever it is he's creating. So that's, again, a hidden premise that we wouldn't accept at this stage. He'd need to make an argument for this creator having to be omniscient.
According to the understanding. But if that is the case, then it also logically applies why I cannot find him in the natural world in the physical form. Yeah?
No, it doesn't. In no way does it do that. That's a complete non sequitur. We'll see now whether he argues for it. His view, let me just spell it out here. His view is, if he knows everything, because that's what he said, right? If this God is, then it follows that we cannot find him in the natural world. No, it doesn't. What's the argument for that? Why is it that an all-knowing being cannot be found in the natural world? The creator of the world and this all-knowing being cannot be part of it. That is, in fact, now you're limiting God, and I haven't heard a good argument as to why that you would impose that limitation. It seems to me to be, in a sense, self-defeating. So there's probably some argument out there, but he's not establishing it, or he's certainly not presenting it. And if I was listening to him now, knowing what I know and having a bit more experience, is that as soon as I hear something, I'm like, stop, what's the argument for that? You just made that claim. I'm granting you and creator creates for the sake of the discussion, but these other things you need to establish through some sort of argument, and not just, I'm not going to grant this to you just because you're asserting them.
Not the signs that we would consider, but in the physical form, I can't find him. Fine.
Whoa.
Now,
just because he can't find him doesn't mean that he can't do it. What's that all about? I mean, that he would be very quick to challenge somebody who said, oh, well, because I don't see him, he doesn't exist. What? Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, somebody like that might say. But he's just said, oh, because you can't find him in physical form, he doesn't exist. No, that doesn't follow either.
now, the next step, if there is a creator, then necessarily there must be a communication from the creator to the human being.
No, another non sequitur. Goodness gracious. We're in 1 minute 41 here. I mean, listen to how many non sequiturs, so many unsubstantiated claims that are made here, even if we're just granting the initial idea of a creator. That definitely doesn't follow. Stops, you wanted to add something there.
No, I was screaming no.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a deist creator. It doesn't follow that just because the creator has created this universe, or is indeed some sort of creator, that he wants to communicate with humans. That doesn't follow. You need an argument why it's not a deist God, but rather a personal God. And again, he's just saying that it follows. No, that's an error in thinking. We've had, I don't know, I've lost count. We'd have to go back and rewind this. At least 4 or 5, I would suggest, up to this point. We're only 1 minute 41 into this. And we've granted that a creator creates a universe. So we've granted that an attribute of a creator is to create. So we've given him that, but everything else that he said after that, to me, he hasn't given an argument, and doesn't necessarily follow. It could follow, but he'd have to present an argument for why that's the case.
I'm restricting it to the human being, yeah? There has to be. And if there is, where is it? And if it did come, not only do I need to find it, I need to then assess what it has, which other writings or other sayings of sages will not have.
Just notice the language there is right. Very vague language. If it's come, I'll have to assess the writings. Is he now talking about some sort of being? Is he talking about the message from the being? This is the sort of language that this guy uses on purpose, right? This vague and ambiguous language, so the interlocutor doesn't follow along clearly. There's this ambiguity that he could then, because if the interlocutor then says, you were talking about that, he says, no, but I was saying this, if there was something like this, right? So it leaves it ambiguous. So if you challenge him on one point, he could say, well, I actually meant that. So somebody like this, I would be stopping and say, what do you mean by that? Get very clear on what you mean. To use our friend Darren Hamza, you got to stop and underline with this guy in big, bold crayons every step of the way, because he uses this intentionally vague language so that he doesn't have to make strong claims, or indeed, if he's challenged, he can go back and say, well, I didn't say that. I said this, which is ambiguous.
Yeah? So second process came in. You now are looking at the contenders, yeah? And that is what I did. I mean, there are many minor ones, okay? There is a book that I have, and it's the title is The Anthology of World Religions. Okay. So it basically covers every potential claimant, okay? Yeah. But they have got their own books, for sure. Yeah? So you have to go through all those. One by one, as an elimination process, yeah? Because you have to look at what criteria this superior being has provided, which automatically is not one that a human being or a collective group of human beings can actually meet. Yeah.
Excuse
Otherwise, there
me,
wouldn't be any difference.
Why? Again, why? He's rambling on and on and on, and I'm surprised that the guy is just letting him. Why doesn't he say, well, why are you saying that?
And what's the criteria? He said that there must be this criteria. Well, what is this criteria? And why would we accept the criteria? You can put forward any criteria you want, but I, as an interlocutor, am at liberty to not accept that criteria unless you give me a good reason to accept it. So again, you're just vaguely saying that there's some criteria there. You haven't established what the criteria is and why I or anybody else ought to accept it. So this is all vague and ambiguous language. Now, to Muslims who are listening to this might be music to their ears because it's a very hypnotic, right? When people speak in ambiguities, it's easy for the mind to drift off. When you talk specifics, then you got to focus in on the specifics. But when you don't do that, this is how the mind drifts. And at the end of this, some Muslims will again, and I don't know, we could always look at the chats here and see what they're saying. One of the most composed, the soft guy, blah, blah, blah. I'm glad Shabir spoke to this guy. He can answer his questions. He hasn't answered a question so far. He's given vague, ambiguous statements. But this is a sort of thing that happens in the comments here with people like this that are utterly hypnotized because of this ambiguity in language.
Right. Okay. And then you know for sure that this is a man-made construct.
Right. So what convinces you that, let's say, Islam is not a man-made construct?
It's a shame that he went to that point about what convinces you of Islam, because he said that he looked through all of these books. I want to know from him, what's his argument that it's more likely to be, Allah as in like a personal God than a deist God? What is it that did that for him? Because what he seems to be wanting to say is, hey, before making my decision, I looked at all of these different things. So you can't appeal to you shouldn't be appealing to the Quran at this stage. Or if you are going to appeal to the Quran, then what's the point of looking at everything else? Because you're going to match it against the Quran and you already have a bias for the Quran. So if the claim is that, hey, I had to look at all of these and I was, being objective about it, or I was being undecided and I looked through all of these and then I settled on Islam for X, Y, and Z reasons, the question I would have asked then is, why not a deist God? That seems to be at least more likely than Allah. And if it isn't, what's the argument that it isn't? Because it's a more general God, it hasn't interacted, there's less things to say about it, there's less errors, there's less problems potentially with it, so why not a deist God? But he's already asked now, why Islam?
Right. Number one, the study of the book itself, okay? When you look at it not on a superficial level, look at the books in depth. My view is that the evidence speaks for itself.
Don't you love that? Right, so you do an in-depth view and the evidence, right? You hear the key words here. At no point does he give you evidence, but he uses these buzzwords, because to the gullible ears, Shabir said there's evidence. He didn't tell me what evidence, but I heard the word evidence, and he's done a not a superficial, investigation with evidence. The first thing you're going to ask is, okay, what was the most powerful part of the evidence that suggested to you that this was the case? And maybe that'll come up. But these are the buzzwords that are thrown out without actually committing to anything. You see, he's not setting anything up substantial here at all. It's still this sort of vague notion that he presents.
Okay. Contained within the Quran. Yeah. Right. Now, I have done that with other books because what I necessarily did,
again, I'm sorry I'm stopping, but it's only a 13-minute video. So he says he's done it with other books. So the question immediately jumps to my mind: what was your criteria that you established that one book was better than the other? Can you share with me that criteria? Because then I can go away. If I agree with it, you'd have to make an argument why that criteria is something I should accept. But if indeed you have had this criteria that you've, quote, looked at other books, but you've established the Quran is the superior book, what was that criteria and why should I accept it as well? Right, those are key questions at this stage, because he's let on, at least, that he's supposedly looked at other books.
This message from on high has come, then the creator will have established a criteria wherewith to establish that this is not man-made.
Okay.
Yeah. You hear it again? Just this vague language. This creator would have established a criteria. The question here is, what is that criteria? Why should we accept it? And unfortunately, this guy at this moment in time isn't, but he's on a bit of a ramble now. So he's on a monologue with this vague, ambiguous language, and it's very easy to get hypnotized. So I'm not blaming him per se. That language is hypnotic, and it stops you actually. And how I know this is a separate point, but it stops you thinking critically. It's actually designed not to let you think critically. It dissolves the critical thinking in a sense when you use this vague, ambiguous language regularly and continually.
Yeah. So I looked at the biblical one. I looked at the other ones also. They also contain criteria. Yeah. But using the criteria and assessing the evidence, they fail.
Okay, what is the criteria and what is the evidence? Can we just hear? This is all vague, ambiguous stuff, right? How anybody can take it that this guy's saying anything substantial.
Yeah, he's just
well, it's not beyond me. I think I've explained why Muslims think this, right? To this is music to the hypnotic ear, right? It's like singing a song or you chanting or something like that. You just go along with it and go, that's amazing. And somebody would ask you, well, what was it that was amazing about it? But I don't know, it just was amazing. But it's not explicable to people because they're in a hypnotic state. And that's what he's doing here.
The one that didn't was the Quran. Okay. Now, there is a standard here. However, I took it a bit further than that. If, for example, the Quran talks about, do you not consider the heavens? Do you not consider many things? The natural world. Do you not consider the birds? How do they fly? Okay. Yeah?
Yes, we consider that. We understand how those things operate. We've got a reasonably good understanding of that. So the fact that the Quran has asked us to consider that, we've got answers and they don't come from the Quran, and the Quran in some circumstances contradicts those. So is that not evidence against the Quran? Again, you see, he doesn't make any specific claims, just these sort of general claims. Ask us to investigate this or to consider this. We have done so. What is it the Quran says that we should take seriously, especially today, or even back then probably?
And there's a good comment here by Rafe who says that Shabir has mastered the art of talking slowly and sounding like you know what you're talking about. So it's not necessarily like the content, but he's just sounding, philosophical.
But it is only now, okay, because now we start slowing this right down so everybody can hear it. It does if you were just listening by and you were sort of hypnotically, but once we break this down and you can see and you can know, we go into slow-mo, you can see that nothing substantial is being said here at all. He's very careful, in fact, not to do that, because then he has to defend that. And as long as he can stay high level and generalistic and sort of, esoteric in a sense, then it's much harder for somebody to challenge. But what should be done with this guy is, okay, you made that argument. What do you mean by X? What do you mean by that? Get down to the specifics. He hates specifics. And so that's where you need to go, because that's what a good interlocutor will do. Hey, I'm saying this specifically, and here's the reasons why. He does exactly the opposite.
Well, what
now,
you need to do is ask, how do the birds fly?
Yeah.
Sorry,
question, right? Is it established in the Quran how that happens? Because you're saying the Quran tells us that we should, ponder on these or look at them. So we've done that, right? Thanks to the Quran for saying something that's trivially true.
If we should go and look, think about how the birds fly, well, the Quran says they don't. It's Allah that holds them up. So as soon as you start going into specifics, it fails.
Yeah, and something like that immediately tweaks my unfalsifiable trigger. Okay, if that's the case, how would we establish that Allah didn't do that? What would need to be the case such that birds were flying and you went, you know what? No, Allah's not sustaining them. So if a Muslim did go down that route, that seems to be an unfalsifiable route. And I'm immediately going to ask how we could establish that it wouldn't be the case. What would need to be the case in reality for a Muslim to go, who accepted that view, as you just put it, Stops, to go, well, no, actually, now I can see that those birds flying are not being held up by Allah. What needs to be the case? And of course, at that stage, very unlikely they could give you anything substantial. That's why those things, those unfalsifiable type claims are like red flags to me.
I'm also looking at what evidence is available through all the research that we human beings have done. Yeah. So if you look at physicists, you look at ornithologists, you look at experts in bird migration, you start looking at that evidence and it tells you, so for example, the European robin, it migrates. But what does it use to be able to go to where it needs to go? One, just as an example, you have got the shearwater bird, which traverses 8,000 miles.
So he's talking about the migration methodologies of birds or whatever the case is. How is that establishing the Quran is true?
There is nothing in the Quran, there is nothing in Islam about any of that. He's just saying, you see, it's a miracle how the birds do this. Look how God is great, how the Creator managed to do all that. That's all he's doing.
And
But that's a terrible argument for Allah, right? Because in centuries gone past, Muslims would have said, look how wonderful Allah's creation is. And now we know how that works. We have a good naturalistic explanation for many of those things. And in fact, with migration, I'm sure people who are in the chat, they would look it up and we'll have good hypothesis or probably even good evidence for how birds do that. But again, that's got nothing to do with the Quran. So he's just making, as you say, Stops, generalistic statements that would leave people to infer that the Quran is suggesting this or alluding to this in some way. And again, the question the other guy should be asking is, okay, so you told me about these migrations of certain animals. How does that relate to the Quran? And then he might just say, oh, well, it gets us to ponder. Well, thank you for saying something trivial. Any book, I could open any book and it will say, and I might get an idea. I read this book by Sean Carroll or this anthropologist. I'm now starting to investigate. So was it that book that actually got me to ponder? What's the difference between that and the Quran? At the moment, you've said nothing that would establish the Quran is in any way, a useful book to use in any way.
Miles. But these are fledglings. They've just been born. As soon as they learn how to fly, off they go. 8,000 miles in a sort of 8.
Right. Okay.
Now the question is, how is this happening? A natural explanation is provided. Yeah. That look, for example, the European robin. Okay. A professor slipped my mind. A professor has written a book in which he looks at how potentially these birds must be using the magnetic.
Yeah, I've heard the feeling.
Yeah.
Heard, yeah.
You know
sense of magnetic field.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the magnetic field is not something that can be physically used by what we would consider to be natural selection. Yeah.
That's a big claim. How did you establish that? I mean, if you just said the professor has studied this and suggested that's what birds are using, and then you say, no, natural selection can't do that, well, you just contradicting the exact expert that you brought up. Why would you do that? I mean, are you listening to yourself here? You are now contradicting the person who said this. And what's the argument that somebody, or that natural selection or indeed animals can't use the magnetic effects of the earth? No argument given, right? Just the case that it can't be the case. So where do we think he's going with this? He's saying there's naturalistic explanations. He's saying that that this professor has explained this, but he's then saying that this can't come about through natural selection.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Go on.
No. Go ahead. Play the video.
Cannot be utilized.
It might be able to.
Okay, tell me how.
Well,
You just told us how. What do you mean? Tell me how. You just appeal to a professor that has studied these, and that's what his hypothesis is, and he may well have good evidence for it. We haven't established that yet. But now you're saying it can't be the case, and you're saying to him, how's that the case? Like, what's going on here?
well, I'm not an expert.
No, of
in
course, we are just having a
biologist, but, I mean,
conversation. Yeah.
But look what's happened now, right? He's now gone from the migration of birds, which is totally unrelated to the veracity of the Quran being the case. And now he's asking the other guy to provide evidence for how this is the case. Can you see how quickly it turns? Because the other guy wasn't asking questions and pinning him down, he just nodded along, and then now Shabir's in charge of asking questions. He's no longer providing evidence. He's asking the other guy to establish the claim that, natural selection could do this. He was the one who brought up that natural selection couldn't and hasn't got an argument for it, and now asking the other guy to give the opposite view with some evidence or an argument.
The Shabir shuffle.
Correct. Complete Shabir shuffle, shifting of the goalposts, as we call it.
the premise, as I understand it, is that mutations cause random change, and if the random change gives a slight benefit, then it will be passed on, and that's the propagation of evolution.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, I'm not sure whether you agree with evolution or not, but
I can see, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you see, when you are talking about mutation,
okay, there's another phrase, right? If you ever hear this guy, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's just a filler phrase that is like, I agree with you, but, or I'm with you on but, right? If you watch other videos, he'll use the same sort of technique, and the but negates everything you've said before it. But it lures the interlocutor into thinking that there's some agreement when in fact there isn't any agreement. It's just a statement there to lure the interlocutor into, not lowering their defenses.
about mutations themselves, yes? You are talking an internal change. But in order for that change to take place, the first thing that would have to be within the body of that particular bird is this connection with the magnetic field.
No,
well, again, we'd have to.
What are you talking about? No, sorry, I don't understand what he's talking about. No, if you have the ability to use something that in your body, you are using something that was there but not being used. So if there is a piece of metal that reacts to a certain way, the bird will then learn how to do that. But there is no prerequisite because there is no goal. And this is what he doesn't understand. He always thinks that evolution requires a goal towards which it is working. It is not like that. It is just that you have something that is being used, and then you learn from that because the species or those that have that ability or this advantage will go on to procreate more successfully than the others. That's the only thing that drives it.
Yeah, I think he's making the claim that the bird would need to have this ability to detect or somehow interact with this magnetic field, and he seems to be claiming that natural selection and or the bird can't do that, but appeal to a professor who suggested or whose hypothesis is exactly that. What's the evidence that this can't be the case? Right? That's the only thing here with somebody like this who doesn't actually make any substantial claims and then shifts the goalpost or shifts the burden and the goalposts. But we need to ask, what's the evidence? You just said that a bird can't do that a bird must have this. And what are you saying the bird can't? Where's your evidence the bird can't? You appeal to that professor. Are you now saying that you disagree with that professor? What's your evidence for that? But again, remember all of this. We're going off a complete tangent here. We're now no longer talking about, is there a creator, or certainly why is Islam true? Because that was this gentleman's original question, right? Well, how did Shabir select Islam? And now we're off on a complete tangent here. Very easy if you're not an experienced interlocutor and we don't slow this down to notice this happening. It's easy, again, being in the armchair afterwards where we can slow it down. But it's a good learning for all of us, I hope.
How? Because you must remember that the magnetic field is so weak, that it has to be below what we would call the normal atomic level. Okay. So
what is he talking about? What is the normal atomic level? If you look at the magnetic field, especially if you go to the poles, you'll see, the what do you call them? The particles from the sun interacting at the poles, right? And there is an effect. And of course, when the astronauts flew to the moon, they had to go through, what was the belt?
Van Allen.
The Van Allen belt. Thank you. Yeah. And that's just outside, or again, I'm not sure exactly, but I think it's just outside or inside of the magnetic field of the Earth. So it is fairly powerful. The fact that we don't perceive it here on Earth doesn't mean that other animals can't perceive it. So, I mean, where's he coming with this? And I don't know what the normal atomic number or the normal atomic idea is here. He's just making up stuff. Yeah. What's the normal atomic level? I mean, this is just when you get into gibberish, right? You throw a few scientific words into your gibberish statement, and then it sounds like it's something stupendous when in fact it's basically gibberish and just some sort of unintelligible assertion.
So how?
Well, I would like to go this way.
Yeah, sure.
It's like this. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No problem.
Are you saying that if we can't prove this to be a part of nature, then it must have been from God?
Good. Exactly. Right. Now he's kind of getting back there, right? He could see that this was waffle and was going off in the long grass. And that's kind of where he's wanting to go. Hey, this is miraculous. If these birds do this, either we don't know how and it must be miraculous, or we do know how and that's miraculous, which, but then you need an argument. Are you saying we do know how and it's miraculous, or we don't know how and it's miraculous? And if it is miraculous or it is something, how did you establish that? Especially if this professor has said that he has a hypothesis and presumably has some reasons for that.
No. I'm not God of the gaps. No.
Right, okay.
No.
Well, that's good. We get that out of the way.
That's out of the way.
Okay, so
like I said, once I have established the message itself, I am also looking at the evidence it is saying to consider. Okay. Yeah. So when it is talking about, look at how the birds fly. Yeah. Well, how do they fly? The creator is holding them up. Well, he's not literally holding them up, is he? What are the mechanics? There they go, those birds.
There we go. Right. So he is a believer the creator's holding them up. How do we establish, how could that claim be falsified? Right. To me, that's just immediately an unfalsifiable claim. I want to know how that could it be the case that the creator is not holding them up? Because presumably, maybe in the past, they thought that the creator was sending down lightning bolts. Now we have a good understanding of how that happens. How does he establish the creator's
It's
holding it up?
amazing how suddenly he comes up with all these things, so he knows exactly what it says. So he has been told that there is a mistake in the Quran, which is about the birds, that the creator is holding them up, and that they don't really fly. They don't follow Bernoulli or anybody else, they just follow God. So this is how aeroplanes and everything flies. It's just through the grace of God. That's what it says in the Quran. And this is what he's saying. And he's saying, well, but it's not really that. It says, yes, God is holding them up, but it's not really holding them up. So then why would the Quran say God is holding them up when it's not God holding them up? I don't know how he argues this.
Presumably, some scholar will say that's metaphorical, and what it really means is that God is sort of, I mean, there's a couple of views. I can't remember that there's a specific name for it. I think there's a philosophical name where, you know, God is in charge and is actively controlling every particle in the entire universe. I don't know how that would work with, you know, some version of free will, and I don't know that there's many theists who take that. I don't know how many Muslims accept this sort of view. But if it's not that, then as you point out, Stops, what exactly does this mean? And could this have been much better phrased than this is? But you also see there he's pointing his hand, right? So that's now another distraction technique. Why would you get somebody to look over there? We know what birds are, so why would you point to birds? As if this is all designed to keep the interlocutor, you know, not focused in on the position. That's what he goes to do there. Occasionalism, maybe that's it, Dave. I'm not sure. We'd have to look it up. But these are all distracting techniques. Remember when we did the other one with Stops, Adnan was waving his hand. Anything where there's bodily movements that's going on in front of your interlocutor in some sort of exaggerated way, I take it to be that's a distraction technique, because you won't normally do that. If the two of you are talking and you really want to understand what the other person is saying and have an intellectually honest discussion, you will be focused in on that person, listening carefully and trying to, you know, be as charitable as you can. And you wouldn't want to put him off or throw them off or use any techniques that he's using here. Otherwise, the person could be distracted. And that's the last thing you want if you want to have an intellectually honest conversation.
Those birds, they're flying. What are the mechanics behind that? Now, it is plain obvious that the creator in the Quran is encouraging humanity to go and discover the natural world. There's an actual reason for this.
Did he just say discover the natural world, or is it the creator's world? What's the difference between
natural?
The and the
and
natural?
This is the first time now that he actually goes and mentions creator, Quran, everything in that order.
Yeah. But if it's natural, then it's not from Allah. What's going on there?
This is a common claim that they make, that the Quran is telling you to go and ponder, reflect, and investigate in the natural world, when it doesn't. And it's, I don't know why they always do that. I don't know why they say go, it tells you to go and experiment and to understand everything. I don't know why they say that, because it doesn't. Because as soon as you would do that, you would find that the Quran is wrong. So there's a contradiction right here.
Unless you're a Muslim and you can find a way to reconcile everything in the natural world with the Quran, or just with, as you know, Shabir maybe and other people want to do, which is just God is somehow keeping tabs on all of these things, but he's letting it happen naturally, but he's somehow keeping tabs on it at the same time. I don't know. It seems problematic.
The Quran then actually establishes for humanity, it says, we will show you on the horizons and within yourselves until it is manifest to you, this is the truth. Now, what is it?
What a vague and trivial statement that is. How do we establish that? What's the methodology? How do we establish that it's from this God? Because there's competing gods there, or in fact that it's not God and it's just a process that has happened over billions of years. How do we establish that? The Quran hasn't given us any criteria that is, you know, clear and methodical and logical and that we can all agree to and follow. It's just making these vague statements. But again, the people who are watching this, right, the Muslims who will watch this will just nod along, right, because they've heard these statements before. And so when it's music to their ears, there's no critical thinking going on here.
What is it actually saying? Are we, as human beings, going to get to a stage, bearing in mind that this is supposed to have been brought down 1,400 odd years ago, when it said, we will show you on the horizons and within yourselves that this is the truth. Now, what is it that we in the past 14 or 100 years have discovered about our internal workings? But
whatever we've discovered ourselves. There's nothing in there that the Quran has given us. And if you're just saying the Quran inspired us, but other books can do that. So that doesn't point to the Quran being special. Somebody else could have read another book, indeed the Bible or the Bhagavad Gita or, the Buddhist writings and decided to do some, self-investigation, contemplation. They could have become some kind of medical doctor or a scientist or whatever. So many other books have inspired people to do all kinds of amazing things. So there's nothing special about this claim whatsoever. If all you're saying is that the Quran inspired people to go look about things, but it hasn't given us any criteria. If the Quran said, hey, go out and discover and you will find, the string theory, for example, or whatever, something really unique and special that no other book had ever said and no human could possibly have known in some incredible detail, that would be quite impressive. But of course, it does none of that. It gives these vague, ambiguous statements that other books could have done as well. And in fact, other books probably have done a lot better.
But it mentioned it. It says we human beings are going to do that. Okay. Why? Because this is what the Creator is intending for us. But having said that, it also says on the horizon. Now, the choice of word is odd. Yeah. If me and you are looking here, what would be the horizon? It is the furthest point that we can see. Yeah. But if we travel to there, what happens to the horizon?
Yeah, there's a sphere.
It moves away. So basically, a process of search and find, we are going to undertake as human beings, which is what we have done.
Yes, but that's something that we're naturally inclined to do. So there's nothing in the Quran that's special about that.
And the Quran
further that, like I said.
Sorry, say again?
Yeah, the Quran, he mentions the horizon and then he sort of draws a circle, but the Quran actually has more evidence that it's a flat earth. So,
yeah, well, that's true as well. He's trying to make the analogy that, hey, if you get there, the horizon keeps moving and that's like searching, right? So he's trying to draw an analogy with searching and then he wants to link it to the Quran. But this is like mundane. This is mundane, if not trivial at best. There's nothing in here that's substantive at all, right? But again, to the music, to the ears, to the people who are listening and already believe the Quran is true, this just confirms their belief, but he's not saying anything substantial, which is what I'm saying. He's a master of not saying anything substantial. And to the gullible ear, it sounds like it's something. Yeah.
He's sliding in the idea that it's spherical.
Yeah.
Like I said, if the Quran says, as an example, humanity, is the best that has been created. Amongst them, they are a group who are the best because they are attending to a particular system which is totally fair and totally just.
Okay. How do you establish that we are the best? By what criteria are we the best? We don't run the fastest, we don't live the longest, we don't see the furthest, we don't dive the deepest. What is it that's best? And if you're just going to point to our advanced consciousness, then presumably the Quran could have made that explicitly clear in such exquisite detail that would mesmerize all of us. And we couldn't help but accept that it's from God. Instead, what does it give us? A vague, ambiguous statement that anybody could have made from the beginning of time.
But the question is this: if, as human beings, I was traversing the earth and I came across somebody who is not of my color, should I be aggressive with them? Now, there are instances in the Quran which I would consider to be far, far ahead of what we would call the time that it was revealed. So, as an example, it says, the Creator is the one who gave us our colors and our languages. What has that got to do with the price of fish? Why put a statement about colors and races and languages? Well, today, in the United Kingdom, we have the Race Relations Act.
What the hell? The Quran talked about there'll be different races. Well, we've established that way before the Quran. There were different races out there. People were discovering each other. So this is nothing fancy. Now we have a Race Relations Act. Is this somehow because of the Quran?
Why was that brought into law? Because human beings, based on color, were hating each other. Okay? Now, the Quran goes a bit further and it says, "O mankind," addressing the whole of humanity, "we have created you into nations and tribes."
There's your explanation for why people of different colors and different tribes would be very cautious of each other in the past. Naturally, you'd see the out group as potentially hostile, and that has been historically the case, when we were still developing as humans, and even today, we still see that, right? Nothing unusual about that. That could have been predicted and probably was many years ago. So there's nothing special about that.
We are, yeah. We don't want to, but we are. We automatically seem to allay ourselves with the ones we are comfortable with for some odd reason. But these are why. It says, oh man.
Okay, but if it's some odd reason, either it's a natural reason or it's a God reason, it wouldn't be odd and would be explained in the Quran. So that's not a particularly useful statement. That seems to be going against your point. If there's an odd reason that we are like this, either it's explained in the Quran or it isn't. And if it isn't, do we have a naturalistic explanation? I think it's clear that we do. So that wasn't a particularly helpful statement in favor of your argument, seemed to be against your argument.
Mankind, we have created you into nations so that you may respect each other and not despise each other. Now, I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the evidence, yeah, and it is all fitting. But there's a further...
What evidence is actually fitting here? That we are different tribes and that we are naturally suspicious of each other, and that according to the Quran, that's the reason we've been created like this is to respect each other. Well, you did a piss poor job of doing that. Our natural instinct is to be cautious of an outgroup. So if he created us to do that, how are we supposed to do that if the inclination is to be cautious of an outgroup? What is this just a test against? So I'll create you in the opposite way of what I want you to be, so that you have to struggle to work this out because the Quran doesn't make this clear, and then eventually come to it. And then he can pat himself on the back because the Quran made some vague statement about doing this.
Further step, you see, what I would call, for me, the clincher. My ability to reason has brought me to the stage, even if I say, for example, the theory of evolution, okay, in its physical form, has brought me to where I am today. Whether it be natural selection or any other method that has allowed me to come here today, as I was discussing with the lady earlier on, my ability, which we call the subconscious, okay, allows us very clearly to extend beyond what we would call the natural world. Okay. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, I know that I can use the word, my essence tells me it is wrong.
Oh, wow. So this is the clincher, that his essence tells him that something's wrong. And what about somebody else's essence who tells them that something's wrong or right and it conflicts with him? What is he going to say then? I mean, these are like trivial statements that any human could make about anything. Somebody could come along and say, well, hey, they could use the same words, every single word that Shabir is talked about here, and they say, do you know what? I got this from the Bhagavad Gita. And nobody would be any the wiser, and at no point would they have said anything, or would he have said anything that makes his view any more likely than, say, a claim from the Bhagavad Gita or somewhere else. I mean, this is utterly trivial, and he's not saying anything of substance.
Yeah, I feel like I'm sitting next to an aquarium or something. Like there's nothing here that keeps my attention. I'm just drifting off because this is so inane. There's nothing there.
But there you go, you see, but that's what's intended here. And also the language, if you listen to the sentences as well, they're not flowing sentences, they're like abrupt. It's almost like he's got to think of the next sort of few words to say, to tack onto the end of a sentence. And the sentences don't flow very well. So it's like almost like making up part of the sentence in the moment that he's trying to articulate something. Most of us can speak reasonably, but just listen to the way the sentences are. There's like these hints of short pauses where like the brain is engaged here trying to just like finish the sentence off with some inane words that follow on from one another. I think it's a fascinating psychological view into a person who doesn't want to really have any sort of intellectually strong argument or indeed a specific argument and wants to keep it vague like this and try to throw the interlocutor off.
Mechanics of the body are not telling me it is wrong. What is the essence that I have? What is that element of consciousness that I can't touch, I can't feel, but I know it is there? Okay. It has taken me one step further, and that step is the fact that I am going to die. Now, I am certain, looking at the...
Okay, so we've got to consciousness, and I suppose the best you could say is that we, as far as we know, we are the one organism that recognizes we're going to die. We don't know if other organisms, other animals do, or whether they just live in the moment. Again, I'm not sure on the studies on this. I've heard other people talk about it, that other animals are not aware that they're going to die. And maybe that we're the only animals that are aware that we have a limited lifespan and we are going to die. And that's due to our consciousness, larger brains, etc. There's naturalistic answers for this. So he's got to the view of consciousness and we're going to die. Okay, so what? That, yes, in that sense, that's something different maybe to other animals. But again, this is known. This is quite well known these days. So what is it that he's trying to say that is in some way substantive here that, experts in human psychology and, the related fields don't know? And they didn't get it from the Quran. Let's be clear about that. And they weren't inspired by the Quran either. So at this moment in time, I'm not hearing anything, of course.
The evidence that if I go through life, I get old, decrepit, can't move a muscle, can't move anything. Yeah, all I will have is the memory if it is still there. Yeah. Otherwise, even that is going to disappear. Okay. The Quran interestingly states that, we will grow you into a strong being, and then we will take you back as though you are going back to childhood. And this is what old age is doing to us. Yeah. Well, wait a minute. There's an extension to this.
Hang on. This is actually stated in the Hindu text as well. So what's so special about the Quran? Like, I found the same thing, the exact same thing of the soul remaining the same, but the body changing. But that's also stated in the Hindu text as well. So clearly, he hasn't read, he's basically making that claim. And what specific chapter? He hasn't even specified what chapter does it state it.
But to me, that's not a good thing. The fact that you were a child, right? We understand that as developmental stages go on, when you're early, your brain is growing, etc., till you get early 20s or whatever the case is. What I would like to see, or what I would expect, is that you hold on to that until the point of death, not that you get to the near death and then you start going back to being a child that can't understand what's going around. You become decrepit and all the rest of it. Certainly from the Islamic point of view.
I remember once reading a poem, must be about 25 years ago, when I was working for the local council I was in. And there was a poem written there by an old lady living in an OAP home. She was probably about 90s at the time, from what I remember of the little poem that she wrote. And it was talking about actually not having the body to function rather than not having the brain. So the point about going back to being a baby, I think the implication is there is that the person can't take care of themselves, even in their mind as well, and that's not actually the case. It's the body can't keep up. It is deteriorated beyond the point that the brain and the body can't function simultaneously at the same time in the same way that they used to when they had a spirit of youth. That's the point happens when we get old. Not that that somehow we become reliant on other people when we get old, in the same way that we're reliant on people when we're babies. To be honest, the more I'm listening to this, the more I'm getting a bit bored and sickened by this. As somebody who actually accepts, as you guys know, intelligent design, this is quite, to be honest with you, I'm finding it repugnant and repulsive.
And again, I would expect that, that you would want to keep this mind, because it could be that if your mind goes or the body goes as you get older, you could be persuaded not to be a Muslim. You could, go mad. Other things could happen, and you could damage your own chances of going to hell. Is that what a God wants? Would he want to degrade you such that you've had a good life and then, towards the end you muck it all up? That's not what I would expect. I would expect, at least if you are going to die, you're able to keep the mental and physical capabilities running, such that the point when you do die, you're clear of mind, and to whatever degree body, even if the body wasn't great, but at least clear of mind, so that you can say, yes, I'm going with dignity and I'm still a Muslim, and whatever the case is. But he seems to be suggesting that it goes back to being a child. And as you pointed out, maybe he's just talking about the body, but a child can't really think critically or do a lot there. So if the mind does deteriorate, that's not a great thing.
But the thing is, we just had that in England. We just had that guy, Major Tom, do that walk for COVID. How old was he? He's only just died. He was, 100 years old? And I was just thinking, so when you go further back in time, particularly with politics, Benjamin Franklin, Woodrow Wilson, Abraham Lincoln. These were old men. They weren't young men. They're often old men in their 70s and such. And they seem, when I read their quotes or look at their writings or look at biographies about these men in their age, in their dotage, so to speak, these men seem like as sharp as anybody in their, of my generation now. So I don't find what the Quran is saying, or what he's alleging the Quran is saying, marry well with history that we know of and people when they get old.
Yeah.
And the natural extension is that once I die, is that the end of me? My contention would be guaranteed no. Based on the current evidence that we possess, it is very clear that we do have something within us which potentially is neither here nor there, potentially is extending our life beyond what we would call the normal life.
Okay, what's the evidence for that, right? He hasn't provided any. Here's the thing, right? These are just claims. And he's claiming that there's something that goes beyond this life, right? Clearly he's biased in that view, but what's the argument that that happens, right? And unfortunately, our friend here is just sort of nodding along. I'd be, okay, so you've made a claim that something goes beyond. What's your evidence that there is something that goes beyond? And what is this something? Tell me about this, right? What does Islam say? What does the Quran say? How did you establish this? Because you're presumably providing all this information because somehow it leads back to Islam being true. Remember, that's the claim that he's supposed to be making here. But we're special. We've got this consciousness, etc. And it goes on. Well, again, the Christians make that claim. Other religions make that claim. So in terms of it being, other than it being kind of an extraordinary or supernatural claim, other people do it well. So this doesn't, again, suggest that the Quran is true. This just suggests that other people have, and most likely, or at least one likelihood is that Muhammad got this idea from other people and incorporated it into the Quran. We've read many verses where that's the case. So you haven't established in any way at this stage that this appeals to Islam or the Quran in particular.
But you see, the issue then I faced, I'll finish, and I know you want to come back.
Oh, yeah.
The issue I face is a simple one. All this has already been confirmed in the Quran, and some of it, I looked at the evidence, and the Quran confirmed it. So
okay, so there are those vague statements again, right? I looked at the Quran and the evidence. What evidence? You've made vague statements here that could very well have been said about other books, and you haven't provided any evidence. You've used your catchphrase, your buzzword, but you've in fact given none. You've given some speculations that could appeal to anything. Nothing at the moment is in remotely, there's not even an argument that's been made. There's been some assertions here and nothing else. And unfortunately hasn't been challenged on them.
So both ways, it clearly establishes that there is an intelligence behind everything that I can perceive, not only within my locality, but for as far as I can understand, or we collectively as human beings can discover.
Okay. At no point did he make an argument for this. This is a bare assertion, as you call it, and what can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. What would provide evidence is if there was something that was somehow supernatural after you died, and he could establish it. And not only could he establish it, but he could establish that it was from the Quran and not the Bible or some other books. Then he would have something. He hasn't, and of course, he likely can't do that, which is why he hasn't even broached the subject. But at this moment, he's now got to this some greater intelligence. Sure, you can make one assertion after the other and then pat yourself on the back, and you want to. And at no point, like I say, is this appeal to Islam. So this guy could say, well, hey, other people say the same thing. What makes it special? And he said, but he just said, right, the Quran has confirmed this. Where have you done this? That's just a blank assertion. If we had to go back and see how many assertions that have been made here, and not one argument has been given in 13 minutes here, I would imagine it's at least 20. I would imagine, just round figure.
Right. Well, so you said that you have evidence.
Somebody wanted to say something? Or was it maybe in the video? I don't know.
For life extending after death.
No. I said it's either here or there. I said, look, I'm looking at my essence. Now,
Okay. Unfortunately, that's where it sort of stops halfway. I don't know if there was a second part there. But there we go. Let's leave it at that. That's as much as we've got there. Please, guys, give your views and tell me what you got out of that.
What I got out of that is there's a lot of logic traps that he uses in his arguments, like a lot of, sort of like putting you in like this specific spot, like especially even Stops pointing this out earlier that, why are you making the claim that the creator is, intelligent or all knowing? Like, where do you decide that? How did you decide that?
Thunder, any comment?
As somebody else has said, I don't know how to put it, but I just find this guy quite repugnant in the way that he speaks. He's not. He's all. He's what would they say in Yorkshire? You're all fur coat and no knickers. He speaks a lot, but he's not providing anything. It's a shame, really, because for people who actually do believe in intelligent design, it makes people who believe in intelligent design look stupid. If this is the kind of art, because other people can think these are the arguments.
Yeah, I find him incredibly weak. I mean, he's just a bag of tricks. That's all he's trying to do. He's just trying to lead people so that he can say, you see, you don't know what you're talking about. I know what I'm talking about. You have no clue. I do. That's the only thing that he's trying to do. So
This man is a legend. This man is the legend, apparently.
yeah.
But that's the question, right? What is it that he's legendary in? I think the only thing you can say is sophistry and obscurantism, and an ability to speak in general terms with specific language, such that the interlocutor is almost befuddled as well. If you don't know what's going on here. And the first couple of times I spoke to him, I thought he was charitable, and it took me a little while, and I'm perhaps not the quickest guy to catch on. And then now it's just so transparently obvious. If you go look back at a few of the videos I did with him, I was very charitable in the beginning. I also got the sense we weren't going anywhere, but I didn't press it anywhere near. Today, that would never happen. He wouldn't get 5 minutes into something, and I'd have him, and he'd eventually walk away, because I'd be challenging him on the points of the assertions he's making, and not allowing him to just do these, generalistic, sophomoric type of statements that don't have any substance.
And he's so deceptive. And this is why, because I still took this seriously. So I did a straight commentary, but what Ansar did, he totally took a mickey. I mean, the way that he was standing there, he was just, yeah, that's what you think. Okay, what's next? Come on, what have you got? And the way he was so dismissive of this guy, this was such fun to watch. So this is much more fun than my video, because my video is much more serious. So if you want to have fun and enjoy this kind of thing, go and watch the video with Ansar. I don't even know what it's called or how to find it now. But you'll find it, I'm sure, with Shamir. All right, ladies, gents, that's another gin and tonic show. What is left for me to do is give you a hadith, which is actually I was cheating because I took one that was on topic. So this is medical science proved, yeah. So the long sajda. Now these are different positions in prayer. So what this does, according to this guy, is that if you do this position, there's no heart problem, apostrophe S. It increases. Sorry, It increases the eyesight, the brain work, and face beauty.
Wait, what?
If you do the ruka, actually it's ruka, okay, but with straight legs. In other words, is this like an L-shaped position? This is no knees. I don't know. / joints problems, apostrophe S. So apparently, if you stand straight and you bend forward, you have no knees or joint problems. Okay. Then straight standing. So if you just stand straight, no backbone problem, apostrophe S. So Muslim pray improves digestive system. In short, pray is a full body tonic.
Hold on. The sajda does not cause face beauty. If anything, it actually leaves a red mark on your forehead or a bruise in your forehead in many situations.
You can actually see this. Have you seen photos of people who do this, who actually have a huge mark on their forehead?
I used to have this problem. Like, there was a red mark on my forehead after doing the sajda, the long sajda.
Yeah, you can see this.
Yeah, and there's the standing up. It's like you might as well do a deadlift position with like holding some like light dumbbells or like something. But standing up, that does not improve your lower back. You need some resistance to like, stand up or improve lower back problems, if anything. So and face beauty. Oh my God, that's what happened.
But again, if this was so good, all we need to do is get people that have these problems back and join problems and come and get them to pray in the Islamic way and see if it has any effect. It very likely hurt them even more.
And what about irritable bowel syndrome, like, irritated bowel syndrome, or like?
All you need to do is do the prayer like a Muslim, and that will seemingly sort out some medical problems. Well, that's a scientific claim, right? I'm going to be very skeptical that we'll do that, and it could well harm people.
Okay, guys, thank you very much, people in the chat. Thank you very much for your help. Thank you very much for your comments, questions, and everything. It's so much appreciated that there are people there. This is really, really nice to know that you exist. Thank you, guys on the panel, Thunder, Rob, Moose, and... Oh, we didn't... it's a pity that Smart Cat did not come today, because I would have loved to see Nick's reaction to the questions from Smart Cat. All right, that concludes the Gin and Tonic Show on the 5th of March. We will see you again next week on the 12th, hopefully. If you do want to pop in, you can come and join us now on the Discord server, the Gin and Tonic Discord server. If you have, I don't know if people actually are going to type this in. If anybody wants to know how to get on there, just give us a message, and then we'll just put that into the. It is in the description. I've put this in the description. You can go to this description. You can just click on this, and then you can get there. So if anybody wants to have a discussion on Islam or wants to know something, whatever, it's not recorded. So this is something that stays between us, and so feel free to join us there. Everybody else, we wish you a good night. Have a nice weekend, and we'll see you next week. Good night.
Goodbye, everybody.